Hello, everybody. It is Jackie from Pocket of Preschool, and we are going to talk all about how to use differentiation strategies to make your lessons and your activities developmentally appropriate and individualized for all of your kiddos so they can be successful and happy and engaged and grow, right? That's like the ultimate goal, right? We want kids to be happy. We want them to love learning, and we want them to be able to grow and flourish and be successful, not be frustrated, not be angry, not be upset. Because they have all those big feelings anyways, because they're little and they're learning how to feel all their feelings and do problem solve through all of that. So we want to make sure the lessons and the activities we are creating are just right for them, right? We want to make it that sweet spot. So that's what we're going to talk all about today. I'm going to go through different differentiation strategies that you can use in the classroom, whether you teach 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, or TK pre-K, which I know that's a giant span, but I feel like if you teach 3s, you're going to have some kiddos that are below, and some kiddos are above where they need to be developmentally, just because also a lot of kids, especially kiddos who were in the NICU and things like that, it takes them a while to kind of catch up, and typically they do. But they're loved on a little bit extra at the hospital. So, and different things happen when kiddos are little. And if we are planning the appropriate lessons for them, we can help them grow and be successful and thrive in our classrooms. So this beginning will be a little bit, not boring, but a little heavy. And then we'll get into kind of like lots and lots of examples. Like as always, I have lots of examples of how you can make all of this work in your classroom. Make it higher, lower, make it appropriate for 3s, 4s, 5s, and how to use the curriculum. I have a couple units pulled, and I want to show you specific examples on how you can do that with the curriculum. Because I have the teacher instruction pages on all of them. There are ways to make it easier, to make it harder, to help kiddos if they need some fine motor help, how to like change out the manipulatives or the materials, or maybe even the writing utensils to make it so your kiddos can be successful. So we're going to jump right in. So before you do all the differentiation, you have to get to know your kiddos, and you need to have and teach all of those back to school, beginning of the year, all of the routines, and you need to have all of those visual supports ready to go. So whether it's the green and red choices chart, or maybe your problem solving strategies necklace, or your green and red choices necklace, but all those routines and the rules and just the classroom expectations, teaching all of that at the beginning of the year will ensure that small group goes well, or table time goes well, or center goes well, because they're going to know what to do during different parts of the day and what's expected of them, what behaviors are okay, what behaviors are not okay. Obviously, they're little, so they are going to have big behaviors and big feelings, and we're going to have to help them through that. But if we have strong classroom management with great routines and visual supports in place for the kiddos who need it, and let's be honest, when they're 3 or 4 or 5, you probably need to have those visual supports there at the beginning of the year for everyone, and then slowly fade those away. I have an entire blog post with a free handout all about tons of classroom management strategies and visual supports. So after you watch this, you can hop over to the blog. I have links at the top for that, and you can check that out more. So you can help your kiddos be successful. But that's a whole kind of different kind of topic, right? So we're really gonna, we're gonna just dive into the actual like differentiation ideas and techniques. So one way to make your classroom or your small group time, or table time, however you do your groups in your classroom, and however that may look, centers or center tubs, you can do grouping different way. Now, you don't want to do just one kind of grouping and do that the entire day all year long and never change, right? You want to have a little bit of everything, right? So you want to have ability grouping. So sometimes you want to group kiddos based on their ability. So maybe for you're doing a letter activity small group, you're going to have a group of kiddos that don't know any letters, and you're going to have those kiddos in a group. And maybe you have kiddos that know some letters, and then maybe you have some that know almost all their letters. Or maybe like they just know some uppercase. Maybe they know most of their uppercase, or maybe they know almost all of the letters. So you're going to have different small groups, and you're going to put them in different groups so that way you can tailor that group for the kiddos that don't know any letters. And then the kiddos that know some letters, you'll be able to make that group a little bit more challenging. And then the kiddos who know almost all their letters, obviously you want to make that very different than the kiddos who don't know any letters. Now, how do we know how to make those groups? So you're going to want to use your data book. And how I make small groups is I literally, and I have a whole blog post on this too. I have my class at a glance, and I literally can go, okay, these 5 kiddos know some of their letters. I'm going to put them in a group. And these 5 kiddos know no letters. I'm going to put them in a group. And these, whoever's left, they know almost all their letters or all of them, and they're going to go in a group, right? These class at a glance by all the skills, you're going to be able to group them by ability. Same for counting. These kiddos have no one-to-one correspondence yet, and that's okay. It happens. That's why we're here, right? When they're 3, 4, and 5, sometimes they just don't have that skill developed yet, and that's okay. So those kiddos are going to go in one group. And the kiddos maybe who have one-to-one correspondence to 5, they're going to go in another group. The kiddos who have one-to-one correspondence to 10, they're going to go in a different group. Or if you're teaching, TK, these kiddos may be ready for some informal addition because they have one-to-one correspondence to 20. Because if you put all those kiddos in one group, some kiddos are going to have a hard time because it's going to be too hard. Some kiddos are going to be bored because it's too easy. So use your data to guide your groupings. So you can have ability, but now you can also have mixed ability, which means you're going to have some, like all of those kiddos, a little bit kind of sprinkled in of everybody. My morning table time is typically mixed ability. So my table time is usually a small group that we've done. I repeat it for table time, or it's maybe something that has open-ended materials. Like maybe we are using writing trays and I have uppercase letters, I have lowercase letters out. So the materials I have are differentiated, even though everybody's doing the same activity. So if you can also do mixed ability because the kiddos will support the kiddos who have the skill or have a higher level skill will verbally explain things to the kiddos who don't have that yet, which is a great skill for them. That's a higher level, having to verbalize your thinking. And the kiddos will be watching and observing the kiddos who already have that skill. So then they're going to be learning from their buddy. You can also do peer selected. So maybe they're going to pick a buddy and they're going to do a game together. You can do random, which is exactly what I mean. You just kind of pick them as you go. I hardly ever do that one. Just because I usually have more of a plan in place. And then maybe it's interest-based. So maybe you're doing a theme and maybe this group is going to do a car activity, this group is going to do trains, and this group is going to do like something with boats. Maybe you're doing transportation, or maybe you're doing zoo, and these kiddos like the safari animals, and these kiddos like rainforest animals, and these kiddos like the polar animals. So you're going to do it based on interest. And you know your kiddos, so you kind of know what they're interested in and what they're not. Or you can just ask them because they will tell you all the things about themselves. So we have the types of groupings you can do. That's one way you can differentiate. And like I said, another way you can differentiate is with so there's 4 areas of focus. So content, so what kiddos are learning, the actual skill, the process of how they learn it. That's more to me for like upper grades because that's more of kind of learning styles thing, right? Like maybe some kids want to hear the book, whereas some kids may want to read the book. But for us, a lot of it is going to be hands-on, and we're going to be giving them verbal as well as visual support. Like we're kind of going to be doing all of it at once. And then like product, how they demonstrate it. And again, that is going to be based on how old they are. Whereas some of my TK kindergarten kiddos, they're going to be able to write and do more of a write it down or do some kind of worksheet to show what they're doing. Whereas my 3s and 4s, they are just doing the hands-on piece. We don't want them having to do all the worksheets and all of that because that's not what's developmentally appropriate for them. And then we also have the environment, which is kind of like the tools we're using to learn. So maybe these are uppercase letter beads, or maybe you have uppercase letter magnets. So maybe you're going to differentiate by using different materials. So one group's using the uppercase, one group is using lowercase. And again, these can be letter beads, they can be magnet letters, whatever you have. So Those are all the different ways. So what students are learning, the actual skill, how they learn. Maybe some of your kiddos may need some extra visual support, but it should be hands-on because or little. Little, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. And then again, they may be able to have a writing or kind of show you what they've learned piece more once they get in that TK pre-K. But 3 and 4-year-olds, they need to almost all of it needs to be the hands-on piece, right? So we're going to go over some other ways that we can alter the learning environment, or we can alter our learning tools that we put out, or the manipulatives, to meet the needs of our learners. Because I feel like that's a really big way that we differentiate in preschool. So, and then the content, I forgot to tell you, don't forget, I know it's tiny, but make sure you have your developmental guides. This one's out of the Fine Motor Journals group. And then these are the learning standards. So this will also tell you the content of what to teach and what level to teach it at, like the developmental sequence, right? We don't want to give kiddos, we want to have the appropriate expectations, right? We don't expect a 3-year-old to be writing and sound spelling. They're going to be scribbling, right? So we want to make sure that we're expecting the appropriate thing based on their age, using all of those developmental skills. And then we also want to teach in that sweet spot. So this is called zone of proximal development with Vygotsky, again, super fun, but we have to know the research and kind of why and what we're doing, right? So zones of proximal development is learning to where it's not frustrating, right? So there's a level where kiddos will learn with support, because it'll be a little bit tricky, but they can still learn if we give them support. So that would be like small group, or maybe like a one-on-one with the teacher, and one-on-one learning with an adult and a kiddo. So that would be a little bit above where they're at independently. And then the independent task that they're doing, that's something that's a skill they already have and they're able to do independently with ease, with no frustration. And we never want to be in the zone where it's something they can't do, no matter how much we help them at all, right? Like that is a level of frustration that we will have kiddos in, and that is a no zone. We don't want to be in that zone, because they will have a behavior and it's on you, right? And you know what? Sometimes we think a kiddo has a skill and they may not have it all the way. And so sometimes you're going to have to kind of change your small group or your teaching kind of on the fly, right? You're like, oh, this isn't going well. This is too hard. And you have to kind of take it down a notch, right? So sometimes you got to kind of really observe and watch the kiddos that you're teaching, because again, they will tell you this is too hard, or they may not be able to verbalize that, but they may start to exhibit some problem behaviors because it's too hard and they're frustrated and they're trying to get out of the situation that isn't fun for them. So pay attention to your kiddos and they will tell you. And the longer and the more into the school year that you are, the more you will get to know them. So it'll be easier to teach in that sweet spot, where small group, again, it'll be in that zone that's a little bit higher, something they couldn't do independently, but they will be able to do with your help successfully. And independent tasks, we want to make sure those are something that they can do independently without frustration, because again, we don't want them frustrated. We want them loving learning. And then don't forget, also, you want to make sure the activity is an appropriate length of time. If you have 3-year-olds, the activity should not be 30 minutes long. It's going to be like 10 minutes, right? Maybe, if you're lucky. If you have 4-year-olds, it depends on the activity again, like how much sensory, how hands-on it is, all of that. But, 15 minutes max for small group. And that's if it's a lot of sensory in there or a lot of movement. If it's super, super hands-on, or maybe there's like, you're using like markers and a lot of fine motor, that maybe only be 10 minutes. So you want to make sure also the length of your lesson, or the length of even if it's a hands-on activity, the length is still appropriate for the kiddos that you have, whether they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or some kiddos just have a lower attendance span, and that's okay. So you need to make sure that you're not making the lesson go too long, because then there will be behaviors, and then you need to be end it. I have had that happen in myself in my classroom, where I'm like, this lesson's it's so awesome, but it took a lot longer than you anticipated. And you know what? Just cut it off and be like, we'll finish it tomorrow. Or if it's like a game, say, you know what? We're gonna switch to the next activity, and they probably will not mind, because they're done. Like, their attention span is gone, and they're done with the activity and they're ready to move on too. So, and because that happens, right? Sometimes we just think something will be faster, or maybe sometimes it goes faster than we even anticipated. So now what we're gonna do is go through some materials that we can use to differentiate our lessons. So let's talk about manipulatives. So I use manipulatives for literacy games, for math games, for fine motor games, for butcher paper activities, all the things. And here is a way that you can differentiate it just by using the manipulative. So if you use flying around, like a bigger pom-pom versus a smaller pom-pom. So my 3-year-old teachers, you're gonna wanna use bigger manipulative. And this will go with pom-poms, beads. You could even use the bigger ones if you have twos, the bigger pom-poms if you have twos, because they're not gonna be counting as high or they're not gonna be doing the activity as long. So these bigger pom-poms are perfect for 3-year-olds. The littler pom-poms are great for 4-year-olds, pre-K and kinder. And also, guess what happens? When you pick this up, this requires more fine motor strength than this, right? So you can differentiate by using bigger and smaller manipulatives. Also, these are pony beads. These would be great for TK, pre-K, and kinder. These would not be good for probably 3-year-olds and twos. You're gonna wanna use a bigger bead or a bigger pony bead, which they make. But if you don't have bigger beads, that's okay. Just use like a bigger pom-pom or a bigger manipulative, like all of these awesome, like these are zoo animals, but they're like all of the really big counters, right? We're gonna wanna use the big counters because they don't require as much fine motor strength as would say be the little beads and the pom-poms. So if the activity is frustrating for your kiddos because the manipulatives are too small, that's not gonna be fun for them, right? We wanna make it development appropriate. So if you have 3s, bigger manipulatives. If you have 4s and pre-K and kinder, you can use a smaller manipulative. Now, if you have a class or maybe some of your class, if these are too hard to use, find a bigger bead to use. So that's one way you can also differentiate. You can also use like mini erasers, and I know there's little mini erasers that are smaller than this. There's like this size, and there's even like a bigger one. So again, the bigger ones would be for my 3-year-old teachers. These would be great for 4s, pre-K, TK, and kinder, and even the littler ones would be good for pre-K and kinder. And then we also have all of the cube blocks, which I forgot to grab, but I also love these. They are bingo chips. Now, if cleanup is not fun for you or your kiddos, which I don't really know what kid likes cleanup, these are great to use for manipulatives because they clean up faster. So it's a really fun, engaging manipulative to use because, like, if they're all on the table, you can clean them up really, really fast. So if you have a fun manipulative in your classroom that isn't frustrating for your kiddos to clean up, that's important too. So you want to take cleanup into consideration when you're picking your manipulatives, because you can have a great lesson plan, but if you have a manipulative that is too hard for them to pick up, it's not going to go well. If so, pick manipulatives that work for your age group of kiddos. That's one thing. Another thing you can do is writing utensils. So we have a few different things, right? We have markers. I'm gonna put them in order. Markers, crayons, and then we have pencils. I love using golf pencils. Those are my favorite. Markers are the easiest because they don't require a lot of pressure and it'll be bright and vibrant on the page. I use these almost all the time if we're doing a writing activity, because also you need to pick what objective you're working on, right? If you're doing a writing activity and you guys are tracing letters, if your kiddos have weak fine motor, and again, that's okay. That's why they're in our classrooms. We're gonna help them get stronger. But if they're doing a writing activity and that's already frustrating and you give them colored pencils, the writing component is hard and the writing utensil is hard. So give the kiddos who are frustrated and have weaker fine motor give them markers, or a skinny marker or a pipsqueak marker, which are the shorter ones. Give them markers so that way at least there's one piece of that activity that's tricky. There's one piece that's good for them. Now, if you have kiddos who have a stronger fine motor, switch them to crayons or pencils, because that will help them develop their fine motor skills even more, because markers would be too easy for them. So you can also differentiate, and that goes with fine motor journals. That goes with any kind of writing you're doing in the classroom. Maybe so the writing table, you want to have a variety, right? You want to have markers, you want to have crayons, maybe you want to have pencils, pens, but you want to have a variety. And again, if you're doing small group, think about what's your objective. If it's, handwriting or writing letters, and we're working on, or maybe writing names and we're working on letter formation, or maybe writing shapes, or maybe for 3-year-olds, maybe we're just working on different types of lines. Give them markers if it's hard for them. If the fine motor piece is easy for them, then you can give them this. All right. And then again, in the center, if you have a variety of writing tools, or if you have counters, pom-poms, or maybe you have some big pom-poms, or maybe you have them, I have my pom-poms in one bin, and maybe you have mini erasers, then you have a variety. So kiddos will naturally pick the material that they can do independently. It's kind of like adults, right? Like if you're given a task in a meeting, you're going to pick the task that is the easiest for you to do, that you can do the fastest and in the easy amount of time that you're confident with. You're not going to naturally go pick, or at least I don't, you're not going to naturally go pick the thing that is hard, that was challenging, that's going to make you frustrated. And kiddos are the same way. All right, another way you can differentiate fine motor is with tweezers. And I know we love having tweezers out. And when I have tweezers out, unless it's literally a tweezer activity, I always let my kiddos take breaks. So if we have pom-poms out, and it's literally if it's just a transfer activity, obviously I would like them to use the tweezers the whole time. If it's a math activity and I have the tweezers out as extra fine motor, if they want a break from the tweezers, that's fine, because again, what's your objective? Is it the fine motor piece, or is it the math or the counting or the letters, whatever they're doing, or the color matching? Because again, we want that to be our focus objective. Obviously, we also have other objectives in our lessons, but we want to focus on that main one. Now, again, you can pick bigger pom-poms or easier. Littler pom-poms are harder. These tweezers, I think, are, and any that are big. Now, you're going to want to test your tweezers out. And you want to have your kiddos, because our hands are bigger than theirs, test which ones they think are the easiest to use. Now, so which I typically think these came from some cooking set. So I'll put those away. But these little hand tweezers and gator tweezers, I think, are the easiest to use, because they bend with the least amount of force. Whereas some of those other tweezers, if it's a really hard plastic, it's really hard to bend, so then that's really frustrating. So these are gator tweezers from Learning Resources. I've never worked with them, but I love these. I literally, I think I give these away when I do conferences, because they're my favorite. I just love the plastic, and these are just the hands one. They're from Amazon or Walmart. And then if these are easy for them and they have a stronger fine motor, there are tweezers that are more challenging. These are more of a tripod grasp. But again, these are trickier. If you have 3-year-olds, they are not going to like these. They're going to put them down and they're just going to transfer it, right? So pick the tweezers that are, that are at the right level of development for your students. Another thing is dice. So I have some different dice that I use. Hold on. So if they're working on one-on-one correspondence, I typically use a color dice. They roll it and they get out 1 purple. So these work great if you're doing literacy games and there's or anything with colors and they don't have one-on-one correspondence, use a color dice. You can also make your own. This is just a white cube I had and I put some dot stickers on it. You can also use dot dice. when I'm 3-year-olds, I made these. Again, it's just a wooden cube. It just has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because if they don't have one-to-one correspondence till 6, there's no way they can count this successfully independently. No way. They're just gonna go under the Bible. They're just gonna guess, right? But if it only goes up to this, they may be able to do that, right? So I have the wood dice that go up to 3, and then I have the regular dice that go up to 6. Now, if they can count up to 6, then they use two foam dice, and they can roll 2 and then add them together. So they're working on that informal addition. So it's actually 4 levels. So we have 1-to-1 correspondence, 1 to 3 to 6, and then we would have the 2. So that then they would have an informal addition. And then you can also do identifying numbers. Again, this dice just says 1, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and then 1, 2, 3. This just goes up to 6. And then this one, I think, goes up to 8. So if you are working on identifying numerals, you can use these 3 different dice, and you can differentiate the activity just by using different dice. Another thing you can do is the tray you use. So again, I love using trays. So if you have this tray game, you have these out, or these, whichever you have, you can put out, talk about that in a minute. You can put out these 3 different dice on the table and have one of these out at each spot. These are just those silicone ice cube trays. And again, the kiddos will naturally pick the one that they can do independently, especially, like, you can tell these are I've had these forever. Like, they're very used in my classroom. Okay, so that would be like a mixed ability group when you have the different dice out on the table. And then you can also differentiate with the tray. So we have one that's just empty. We have this one that would be matching colors. And then this one is just identifying the number and putting that many in. So this one would be working on just fine motor, right? So they are just filling it up. This one's just fine motor because there's nothing in it. This one has colors, so they are going to do what? Match the colors. Okay. And then this one, they would have to identify the number and count out that many. So 1, 2. 2. They're bouncing out at me. Okay. So again, we are changing the materials we're using to differentiate for the group. So those are a couple easy ways that we can differentiate. I just spilled this. And then you can also differentiate, we're gonna go back to literacy, with the type of literacy manipulatives you're using. So if you're doing a stamping activity, maybe some kiddos are just using the uppercase stamps because they need to practice, they need more exposure to uppercase letters. And some kiddos may know all their uppercase, so they are gonna need more exposure to lowercase letters. Again, you could have them out for the same activity, or you can differentiate and do, the uppercase kiddos on this side of the table, or this table has the uppercase stamps, and then that table has the lowercase stamps, or this small group is using uppercase, the next small group is using lowercase. And again, you can do it with the letter beads or letter, I'm loving letter beads more than magnet letters right now, so, but these are the lowercase, and these are the uppercase. And then, if they know all their letters and, hold on, let me see if I can, there we go. If they know all their uppercase and they know all their lowercase, and they are gonna work on beginning sounds. I love these sound magnets. This is like the older set. It says it's on Amazon, is newer now. But now your kiddos can work on matching the letter sound. So quilt, Q. So if you have an activity, like maybe you're doing a butcher paper activity, and so maybe one set of kiddos, or you're gonna have all these out, or maybe For the butcher paper activity you're doing for small group, one group is going to do just the uppercase beads. The next group you have is going to do the lowercase beads. And then the last group, you're going to work on beginning sounds. Now, for writing, move these over. For writing, there's a couple things you can do for differentiation. Now, you can, let's say, you also know your kiddos. So, how much sensory do they need in order to be successful? Are you going to use writing? And again, you can do this, you can mix it up. So you can use this is like a sand tray, but I just happen to have rice in it. Maybe I should put the letter that's up here. So maybe you're gonna use a sand tray, and you don't always have to use sand. Again, this is just colored rice. Maybe the first level you could do, this one has little, maybe they are going to make different types of lines. And I typically put pom-poms in here because some kiddos don't want to touch whatever is in here. And they are going to make types of lines, level 1. The next group may make uppercase letters. The next group may focus on lowercase letters. And then some kiddos may be able to do the uppercase and the lowercase. Or you may want to work on student names. And I always have my student name cards. I make them every year, and I make them the same way. One side has their name in uppercase, and one side has their name in lowercase, because we all the types of lines in uppercase letters, they are developmentally easier to make, and these are the types of lines that they're able to make first, according to the writing development continuum based on research. So once they are able to do this successfully, I switch my kiddos to lowercase. And then if they are also working on maybe sight words, you can have them practicing their sight words in a writing tray. And again, adding the sensory component, right? Maybe they like a writing tray. Maybe they like those like hair gel bags, like a sensory bag. Maybe they like to do sandpaper with like a cinnamon stick, or sandpaper and a pom-pom, and they want to make it on there. Or maybe you're going to put the sandpaper under the paper, so that way when they write it with the marker or the pencil, it's bumpy and they can have that fun texture. Or there's that like cross stitch plastic mat you can put under the paper, and then they can write on that. So that'll give them some more sensory input as they're writing. And again, we can do types of lines. This would be my 3s. And then you can work on uppercase, and then lowercase, and then uppercase and lowercase together, and names. So many ways to differentiate with writing and letters. Now, we also need to have appropriate expectations, right? If they are 3 and we are giving them something to write, or they are, maybe, I'll show this in a minute. We'll have a writing activity out. They will be scribbling, and they have to scribble before they can make the letters, like it's called mock writing. So that looks like letters. And then after mock writing comes the random strings of letters. And then after random strings of letters, developmentally comes the beginning sound. So, and then they keep going, right? So if you have 3-year-olds and you want them to write, or for part of the activity, maybe they're doing Write the Room or something, and you're having your 3-year-olds do it, and it's okay to have 3-year-olds do it, but just know that they are going to be scribbling, and you want to celebrate those scribbles just as much as you celebrate a pre-K or TK kiddos random letters and their sound spelling. Now, you can also differentiate with cutting. And cutting is tricky and it's hard. Because a lot of kids don't get scissors when they're at home, because they cut everything, including hair. They will cut things around the house. So a lot of kids are not given scissors at home because, it makes sense, right? So if your kiddos are having a hard time with cutting, or maybe they don't have enough endurance and they can't cut to do the entire activity, give them loop scissors. So loop scissors bounce back open. And so they can get that motion. So that way, if they're cutting and they can't get it back open yet, like this, they'll go and they're stuck. These scissors will bounce back open for them. So it gives them a little bit of support. And then they can switch to the regular scissors. You can also put a little piece of tape around the thumb hole. So we always say thumb to the top, and it's a nice visual reminder. Again, if you have visual reminders on things ready to go, most of my scissors would have these on them until they pick them off. Because, it happens, or they fall off. And then also when cutting, and again, a lot of this is just using, I have a lot of them memorized because I've been teaching for so long, and I am a dork, and I love to read research for fun. Because, yeah. Who would want to read a novel when you could read teaching research? Because that's what I do. Or standards. I literally have so many. I probably have almost all of the state standards printed at my house upstairs. Because I just love reading them. I'm always curious too, like when a state gets new standards, like how do they change? What happened? How are they different from state to state? All the things. So we have to have appropriate expectations, and all of this is based on their developmental continuums, right? So the first thing they are going to be able to do is snip, right? And then after they snip, they're going to be able to cut a short line, and then they'll be able to cut a longer line, and then obviously all the way across, and then they'll be able to cut different types of lines, whether it's like zigzags or like a worm. Now you can see I have these 3 baskets, and I always have these ready to go because if I'm going to do a cutting activity, I want to have things prepped and ready to go so I can easily differentiate in my classroom. Also, you can put a visual on, which is just a sticker, and that way the students, they typically like to hold the sticker and then cut. And then they'll hold the sticker and then cut. Or they can cut on the sticker, whatever they want. As long as they're cutting across, I am fine with that. So, if you have things ready to go, like prepped and ready, it'll make your small group planning easier. Like these I use for fine motor journals. I also have prepped and ready to go. I use paper letters a lot in my fine motor journal. So I have a little bucket of uppercase letters. I have a bucket of lowercase letters. And then I have a bucket of numbers 1 to 10, and then I have a bucket of numbers 1 to 20. So again, I have things that are differentiated, ready to go, so I can grab the items and they're differentiated, so I don't have to take that time and sort everything out all the time. It's like ready to go. Also, if you are cutting, I also have my shapes divided up into the different shapes. Now, for a while I had my shapes divided up into curvy shapes and pointy shapes because curvy shapes are easier to cut, and then pointy shapes are harder. So I switched to having each shape having their own bucket. So we have, you couldn't see that, sorry, curvy shapes. So we have ovals and circles. And then I have over there rectangles too. The black are like really hard to see the rectangles, but I need to take them out. I just haven't done it yet. But I have, pointy shapes. Because when they're cutting a pointy shape, and don't worry, I have asked all of the OTs that I know, when I worked for a school district, I have the most amazing OTs. I will say, the school district I worked for, all the teachers and all the therapists were always so amazing. And we all had meetings together, so it's really fun because you could ask everybody questions, right? Because everybody's an expert in something different. So if I had a question about fine motor, I would ask an OT. If I had a question about gross motor, I would ask a PT. Or oral language, I would ask a speech therapist because we would all have meetings together once a month, and it was awesome. But back to this. So pointy shape. If they are cutting it correctly, what they have to do, and this is why it's harder, they cut down, they have to turn the wrist. And obviously they're going to have their elbows in, right? So I'm going to pretend to be a little kid and cut my curvy shape. So they would cut. Do you see how I turn my wrist? Or maybe they turn the paper. Either one, it's tricky, right? Because if they're cutting the shape like this, they aren't cutting the shape. What are they doing? They're cutting a straight line, which is awesome, but it's not cutting a shape because all they did was cut straight lines instead of cutting out that shape. So again, have curvy shapes ready to go, have pointy shapes ready to go, or when you're prepping the activity, have curvy shapes for one group or pointy shapes for another. Or have all of the different scissors ready to go. I always, in my bucket, I have loop scissors and I have regular scissors. They're always in here, ready to go. Because I want to have things for all the kiddos and all the levels everywhere in my classroom, so that way they can pick the thing that works for them. So what we're going to do now is, let me show you blocks really quick. What kind of blocks instead? Here, get it. Hold on. Okay. Rearranging. Pause for 1 minute. Okay, so for the block center. Now, if you have 3-year-olds, you're probably going to give them bigger things to build with because they don't have strong fine motor muscles yet. So my 3-year-olds will be building with like the big blocks, right? Now, this isn't to say that pre-K can't build with the big blocks because they need to. They need to build with all of them. And they're going to also be using like the bigger block Legos, right? Like they're going to be using the Duplo Legos, all of that. So we're using big blocks. Or if we are using like the popsicle sticks, we are going to be using like the big popsicle sticks, right? Now, if you have 4s or TK or pre-K, you can also add in the smaller building things for blocks, stem, manipulatives, because these for a 3-year-old are going to be so frustrating to build with. They won't be able to smash them together, and they're going to get frustrated just because their muscles aren't strong yet. So that's okay. So give them the blocks. They can use smaller blocks, and they can like use like a smaller popsicle stick or whatever it is, whatever they're gonna do. Because like, do you see, like it's trickier to build with, right? And they can even build with like a Jenga block or Dr. Drew block, whatever they are. You can also add in like the littler manipulatives. Now, my 3-year-olds just get all of this but bigger. So like the big buttons or like these gems but like bigger, or like big pom-poms are really fun to build with in the block center for my 3-year-olds. So again, we're all building and doing the same thing, but the materials are going to depend on the level of your kids, because littler kids their fine motor muscles just aren't as strong yet. Now, regardless of the age, you want to have visuals, because we need to build that background knowledge in the vocabulary, and they are not able, or they may not have seen in real life the thing that they're going to build yet, right? They may have never seen a tent before. This is my camping set, or an RV, or a log cabin. They may not have experienced this yet, so we need to give them visuals so they can look and notice all the different parts. If they want to build a log cabin, they may notice that there's a chimney and a roof and walls. And then my for the 3-year-old, and then maybe my pre-K or my 4-year-olds, they may notice that there's a porch and there's a path. So they may add more detail. So again, we're all building using materials, but the older kiddos are like 4, pre-K, TK, and kinder will be able to use the smaller manipulatives or building materials without getting frustrated, whereas the 3s and 2s are going to need the big things to build with because their muscles are just not as strong yet. Now, I always have blueprints out for my 3-year-olds, for my pre-K. Now again, the expectation is just going to be that they're going to look different, right? So here's a blueprint, probably from Yep, from a 3-year-old. And that was their blueprint. So we have scribbles up here. We have some kind of shapes down here. Awesome stuff. We have another 3-year-old. And then we have a 4-year-old. So we're getting, pre-K kiddo. So we're getting more and more detailed. Another pre-K or older 4 blueprint. And do you see? They're all doing amazing blueprints. It's just going to look different based on the age of the kiddo. And then here is a kindergarten kiddo. And sometimes I take a picture of what they built and I put it next to the blueprint because this makes a lot more sense when there's a photograph of what it looks like. And I just have the paper in the block center. And I either have it where it's just blank with like a line at the bottom. And again, they could be sound spelling. They can ignore it altogether. Like they may think it's a spot for their name. They may not write anything. Again, they may just ignore it, the lines altogether. They may write random letters. This friend has kind of letters in here. And then this friend just did a little bit of scribbles and some simple shapes. So again, we're all making blueprints. We're getting those writing utensils in our hand. So we are exploring, drawing, and writing. But again, at the level that they're at. And we're celebrating that at whatever level they're at. Okay. Now, I have a unit. I want to show you, I have some of the zoo unit. And I want to show you how you can take, that unit and use it and differentiate it based on the kiddos in your classroom. And I keep these in like a little binder so that way I can collect them. And if they want to look at their friends, they can. And then if they want to take them home, they can too. Up to them what they want to do. Okay. So. Oh, and then also, before I forget, while we're lesson planning, here's my teacher binder. So here is a blank lesson plan. While you're planning for small group or table time, write in, uppercase letters and lowercase letters. Or if you're doing the dice, literally, you can use a Post-it too. But literally put how you're differentiating in here so that way you remember to do it. Or if somebody else is helping you that day, that way, it shows that you're differentiating and you'll remember to do it. So now this is the zoo unit. So let me show you some ways that you can differentiate it. So always in all of my center units, I have uppercase letter cards because the 3-year-olds are probably, if they're going to be copying the word, and again, there's a ton of them, they're probably going to be able to write the uppercase letters or the uppercase words independently. I also have lowercase letters out. So you can have out both, or like I typically would have the uppercase letters in the pocket chart, and then I would have the lowercase letters and maybe a little bucket. And then also you may put out different paper based on the kiddos in your classroom, obviously, and the writing tools, right? Like maybe you're gonna have like markers and crayons and pencils, or maybe you're just gonna have markers and crayons because they're gonna, again, pick what's easy for them. So in my classroom was always a mixture of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So I would typically do half pieces of paper just because they go through a lot sometimes. And I would just print it on colored paper so that way it was engaging a little file thing. Throwing things. But if you teach maybe TK or kinder, maybe you want to have a full sheet out, or maybe you want to have a full sheet out with a space for them to illustrate and a space for them to write, or maybe you want to use a dotted line. Again, you do what level your kiddos are at. I hardly ever use this unless I use this for like a journal paper with my 3, 4, 5-year-olds. If I have 3-year-olds, I would typically just have the blank pages out or the half sheet. So that's a really easy way to differentiate in your writing center. A few different ways. We have the types of word cards, we have the types of paper, and then we have the various materials to write. And then here is one of the letter activities. So it is a read, write, build, and I would typically do this for small group, and then maybe for table time the next day after I did it for small group, and then I would have it out in the center. So there's a couple different ways you can play this. So, which I don't, okay, I'm looking for a dry erase marker because it's in a dry erase packet. So I have uppercase and lowercase letters. So you could just do uppercase. If you have 3s, you could put out uppercase and lowercase, just lowercase. And then the last level would be to do build sight words or names with the letters. So again, they can do just the uppercase, and then they would build it with like Play-Doh or beads, and they would write it with the dry erase. So again, you could do uppercase or lowercase. They could have to match uppercase and lowercase, or they could do sight words, and they would write it down here. So again, one activity, many different levels to play it. Here is a letter activity. So we have our letters. There's just a whole bunch of different ones. And these are basically uppercase letters. So you could do, and it also comes with beginning sounds. So some kiddos may not be ready for beginning sounds, and that's okay. So maybe they're just going to match uppercase with uppercase. Of course, I don't have them out, but or I can't find them. Or maybe they're going to do uppercase, which is again, this will be the next level, uppercase with, and of course I can't find the letter right now, but they would do uppercase with the, we're gonna pretend that's a T, uppercase with the lowercase. Okay, or you could have out uppercase and lowercase, and they can match them. And then the last level would be to do the beginning sound. So they can match uppercase with uppercase with lowercase, and then they would match the beginning sound. So again, 3 levels of play, same game. Now, if you're doing syllables, I have this syllable game in here. So we have the 1-syllable words, and we have 2-syllable words, and then we have 3-syllable and 4-syllable. Now, if you have little learners, you can have, real objects out and the cards that come with it. So if you have little learners, maybe like 3s, I would not even have the 4 basket out. I would just do words that have 1, 2, and 3. So octopus, and they would clap it and put it away. And then, walrus, put it away. Peacock, and put it away. Now, if you have 4s, like older 4s, TK or kinder, or the kids that, can do 3 syllables successfully, you can have the 4-syllable words out. So again, you can make it easier or harder. All right. Now, for any letter game you're doing, again, it's super easy to differentiate. So, if I can reach it. So, there's a couple different ways to differentiate letter and number games. One way is, and this also works for syllables and rhyme, is to just use less. So, if the activity has 12 rhymes, 12 rhyming puzzles, only use 6. If it has, letters A through Z, just use the first 6 letters. So that's one way you can make the activity easier, is to use less. So maybe use, 6 letters, or maybe use, 15 letters, or use half of the letters, which would be 15 almost, right? But use, a fourth of the letters in the alphabet, and then use half of the letters, and then use all the letters in the alphabet. There's another way you could do it. You could have them match. I didn't bring these cards over here. Again, we're going to use our manipulatives. So you have, this is the letter game in the zoo unit. So maybe you're only going to have 6 cards out, and then they're going to match uppercase with uppercase. So they're just going to match the uppercase with the uppercase letter. Okay, maybe they're going to match uppercase with the lowercase. And again, you can also have out manipulatives. Now, if you want to make it harder, they would match uppercase, lowercase, and the letter sounds. Okay, so again, use some of the letters, use half of the letters, use all the letters. And again, you could do uppercase with uppercase and lowercase, and then uppercase, lowercase, and the sound. And you can also really easily like take these, and if this was like a pocket chart, you can literally glue these down, and then it can be a like pocket chart activity. Like, and then, you know, then you just use some Velcro, and they would, you know, just Velcro it, or that doesn't match, Velcro it and match it. Because I know a lot of teachers like to make file folder games with the center units. Okay, so we're gonna switch to math as I throw and hit all the things. So again, this is a shape activity. We have shape puzzles. So again, it comes with a lot of shape puzzles. Maybe you're just going to do some, I can't find the other one, some of the shapes. And if you know your kiddos like would need to make it more hands-on, you can always put an activity in a sensory tray, and you can add sensory to it. So again, you can put out some of the puzzles, half of the puzzles, all of the puzzles. And this works with if it's a number puzzle, a shape puzzle, any kind of puzzle, right? So do some of it, half of it, all of it. And again, if you can also do simple shapes. And a lot of times if it has a shape board, there's a simple shape board and a hard shape board, or a harder, like more complex shapes. And also on all of the teacher direction pages, there are ideas to make the activity simpler or harder. If you're doing a counting activity, a lot of my counting activities come with mat options. So whether it's a 10-frame game, and there it comes with a, hold on. This is just a simple 10-frame, and this one is a double 10-frame. And again, you can use different dice. You can also use a color dice if you don't want to use a dot dice. So they would roll green, and they would put one on. Roll purple, and they put a purple on. Or they could roll, 2, 1, 2. Or sorry, I meant to grab that one. Dot dice. So again, you can differentiate with the type of board and the type of dice. Hold on. I need this for something else. The next thing I'm going to show you. I have a ton of roll and dot it games in my units. And some of them come with like a dot marker option. Some of them it's manipulatives. And again, you can make this as easy or as hard as you want. So again, you can use a 3-dot dice. They would roll the dice and then dot that many, 3. Or they could use a 6 dice, roll it, and they would dot it. Or you can also use they could also use pom-poms if you don't want to do the dot markers. And this works for, again, the roll and dot it games that are manipulatives like mats, or they're the dotted boards. Usually it comes with both. So you could use a 1, 2, 3 dice. You could use a 6 dice. Or again, you could use a numeral dice that goes up to 8. Super, super, tons and tons of ways to differentiate all the games. And then this is a zoo family game. So they have to line up the family. So again, you can make it as simple or as easy as you want because it comes with numbers to 20. So maybe you're just going to they're just going to put out the numbers that go to 10, and you're going to put the rest of the cards away. Maybe the tiger one is going to be your next level, and they're going to go to 15. And then maybe, there's also a penguin game, and maybe you'll have that group go to 20. Or you can do the giraffe first group go use the cards to 10. The next group use the cards to 15. And then the last group you have would use the cards to 20. Again, same game. We're just using it at the level that your students are. And then there's also, maybe you're going to use the worksheet that goes to 10 or worksheet that goes to 20. So this would probably be like pre-K, TK, or kinder. This would probably be like 4s. If you're doing 3-year-olds, we're probably just doing the hands-on piece. We're not probably doing the worksheet yet. And then a lot of the graphing games, if it has options, if there's like a bar graph or a tally graph, 3-year-olds can use a tally graph. They just will not do the crossover part. They'll just keep going after 5. It'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they don't understand the cross yet, like the little mark across to make the tally. So they can use a tally graph. It'll just be lines going straight across. Or they can use the bar graph, and then they would spin it, and then, you know, put that one on. And they would spin it and put it on. So all your kiddos can, you know, do the same activity, but it might be at a little bit of a different level, right? Okay. So I hoped this helped you and gave you some ideas on ways you can differentiate activities and centers and small group, whole group, table time, if you use like arrival tubs, whatever it is. I hope this gave you a ton of ideas on how you can differentiate in the classroom using the curriculum and by using the materials that you have collected. So I hope you guys have a great night. And if you have questions, please ask. Also, there are blog posts about all of like classroom management and differentiation on the blog, as well as one on assessments. There are also blog posts on like scissor skills, like ways to differentiate like certain skills like rhyming or counting. All of that is on the blog. So if you want to learn more about that, you can hop over there. There's also Facebook Lives on just assessment, just lesson planning, all of that. So grab what you're interested in, and then the links for all the things are at the top or wherever the links are. And I hope you guys have an amazing day or night, depending on when you're watching, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye.